Executive session or executive meeting now. Are we good to go? First order of business is the approval of the October 13th and the 29th minutes. We'll take both of them. Linda, Eden, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. I'm going to change the agenda up here for a little bit because they should have been on it, but they were not. But is there public comment? Just kind of a clerical thing that we had talked about in the thing that all committee agendas will have public comment on it. Seeing no public comment, move to informational items. Well, unless there's any questions on any of them, we'll receive and file all but the West Peoria, which will be explained. Is there questions or comments on the other items? Seeing none, I'll let Scott do the explaining of the West Peoria Township parcel correction request.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to quickly summarize what's in the agenda briefing, voters of West Peoria Township back in the November 2020 election cycle approved a referendum that dissolved the township. Under state statute, that means that the city of West Peoria assumed the duties of the township for the parcels that are also within the city of West Peoria. There are, however, 35 parcels that were in West Peoria Township that are not in the city of West Peoria. They are largely south of the city of Peoria. They are east of Bartonville, although they also include portions of the village of Bartonville. If you're driving across or on 474 going eastward from the Bartonville exit until you get to the river, you're actually driving through the middle of this area. Some of it is also owned by Liberty Steel, which is formerly Keystone Steel and Wire. The city of West Peoria and Limestone Township have been discussing the issue and trying to figure out what to do for the better part of 2022, or at least the second half of it. They came to us in the fall with what the solution is, and that is under 60 ILCS 1-10, which is a part of the township code. That section of the state statute says that county governments and the county board has the authority to make alterations to a boundary of an existing township. And therefore, based on that authority granted to the board, Limestone Township has made a formal request for these 35 parcels totaling about a little more than 1,300 acres be added to Limestone Township. Under the statute, we have a mandate to post a 60-day notice in the paper and then conduct a public hearing. And then once that is complete, then you would be able to act on an ordinance that we would draft that officially redraws the township's boundaries to add those parcels. And then that allows the city of West Peoria to close out any of the last remaining remnants of West Peoria Township as it was dissolved by the voters. So just bringing bring up for information purposes that we're going to start that process, and so sometime this spring expect to see an ordinance that designates and transfers those parcels from not having any township representation today to having Limestone Township representation. Currently there are no voters that live on those 35 parcels, but they are all owned by someone, and those parcel owners do not have any township representation as of today.
Any questions for Mr. Sorrell? So if you're wondering how 35 parcels from West Peoria ended up in Bartonville, Mr. Summers, the founder of Keystone, was a West Peoria gentleman, and his house was up by Madison Golf Course. So I don't know how he could have done it back in the day, but he made parcels of Keystone, so tax dollars would go to West Peoria Township. So it's basically green space and flooded land. It's not land that anything could be used for. And there was this conundrum after the township dissolved of how to do this. So there was some hard work put in by Limestone and the city of West Peoria, and this is agreeable, and they're both supportive of this resolution. So it's not a resolution, but an item that we have to post. So it was always odd of why West Peoria extended all the way down to Keystone. So next up, any questions on that, or are we good? Committee action, take a motion for the executive session minutes, and then let Jenny do her recommendation. Is there a motion? Paul, Matt Windish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's the recommendation of the State's Attorney's Office that all previously held minutes continue to be held as the need for confidentiality still exists, and to destroy executive session audio recordings more than 2 years old, except for those that relate to pending litigation.
Thank you, council. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next is committee action is 23-24 County Board Committee schedule. We have to publish the calendar. Ms. Williams, Mr. Salzer. Any questions about the calendar? Pretty light agenda for us today here. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next is discussion of standing committees. Mr. Salzer?
Well, we got six of the seven members on this committee on our present committee. So if I make a mistake, feel free to correct me, okay? You other five members. Anyway, we've got a number of resolutions. One, of course, has already, I should say, a joint resolution, one joint resolution, which Heather talked about in the Finance Committee and so forth, and that has to do with the needs of our township road commissioners. They are in need of additions, and the state's going to provide for that by the township motor fuel tax, and as she indicated correctly, that this is a pass-through by us, and our county highway department engineer, Amy McLaren, she will handle that particular situation. The resolutions that are in front of you, the hiring of a engineering firm, Crawford, Murphy and Tilley, out there to handle the phase 2 of the Maxwell Road project, which has to do with, of course, the repair of rehab, actually, of the bridge between Route 116 and the Faber Road, and that'll be handled through our bridge fund and so forth, the entire project and so forth. But what we are going to do is we are going to hire the engineering firm Crawford, Murphy and Tilley, and we had to, in our committee, adopt an amendment because Jeff Gillis brought to us the need for us to increase from it was 241,000, and because of a study that was made, and it has to do with environmental study and so forth. There was an increase of $17,000. So whatever figures you have in your agenda book today, that goes from 241 up to 258,000. Okay. The second resolution, we're fortunate that Amy applied to the state applied to the federal government. And this is going to be a 90-10 project, and it has to do with highway safety, and it's the road from Hannah City. Some of you may have been on it, Hannah City to Glassford, and they're going to do a lot in this area. We had to, of course, approve the hiring of an engineering firm, and that engineering firm is Hutchinson. The project was badly needed because of a safety factor. There have been a number of accidents on that road, and so what they've decided to do, and I think the total cost is going to be like $1,360,000, and that means that we have to upfront the entire project, and then the federal government, they will reimburse us 90% of that particular project. The third one that we have here is the annual county maintenance supplies. They have a process that they go through where bids are submitted on different materials that they're going to need throughout the year, and they do it so that if one supplier can't supply something, then you go to the next one and so forth, so that there's no delay for our highway department in usually getting the particular materials. The last resolution is the hiring of a firm that's going to make a study for us, Walker. They are out of Hoffman Estates, although their home office is really Michigan. The study is going to be made on transportation equity, and it's going to be made in the 61605 area, and they're not only going to study, roads, entrances, and so forth, but they're going to study bike paths, sidewalks, such things as that for us. Now, those are all the resolutions, but we did also have a discussion which Becca Cothrell from the sustainability area, she as well as the administrative staff, they have been studying renewable energy, and that renewable energy is solar, and she made a presentation to us that they were looking at 3 different areas. The State Highway Department, they were looking at Health and Human Services, and they were looking at the Juvenile Detention Center. And what we learned very quickly was that other members of this committee were very, very knowledgeable in this area of solar energy, and they asked a number of questions, and Becca's going to come back with some more information, and some of our members started explaining that there were a number of other areas that could be used for this solar energy. So look for possibly a resolution in this area to the board in maybe 2 or 3 months. Now, you people that are new members, I talk too long, I know.
Member Duncan?
Okay, the Ways and Means Committee had a resolution for monthly delinquent taxes. The motion to approve was unanimous.
Thank you, Member Duncan. Member Rosenbaum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had 4 zoning cases. The first one was a petition of David and Hannah Dutton for a land split. They're hoping to build on it in the future. That passed unanimously. Then we had the next zoning one was a petition of Justin Malik. He was wanting to add 6 acres on, buying from the neighbor, to his already 5-acre tract. So we had that has to go through rezoning to make it from A2 to, I think, rural residential. The third one, actually the next 3, was a petition from Michael Honiger for a church up on Route 150 that right east of Kickapoo. They're wanting to sell their parsonage off to somebody, so that had to become be put into a subdivision. The next one was rezoning of some of their ground back to, I believe, farm ground. They're selling to another neighbor. And the other one was a subdivision waiver for them. So that's all we had going on ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Ricker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under operations this month, we did not have any resolutions or action items. Thank you.
Member Renault?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We didn't, Health Committee also didn't have any resolutions, but we did go about an hour and 15 minutes because we had a presentation on an update to the Health and Human Services campus. So I encourage everybody to look at your agenda packet, look at their presentation. It's in there. We're going to have a part 2 in 3 weeks to kind of go over the floor plan so everybody can kind of understand where we were and where it is now, to try to help reduce the cost of what our first cost estimate was of the facility. So if you have any questions, please reach out if you didn't get to attend the meeting, or you're welcome to come next week if you're or in 3 weeks if you're not a member of the committee.
I think that committee has about 3/4 of the board on it, so. Member Allison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Safety had 4 resolutions. One was accepting the appropriation for additional grant funds to the Child Advocacy Center as a reimbursement for supplies. We also had the annual agreement to participate in the state's attorney's appellate prosecutor program as a service to the state's attorney's office provided by the state for the cost or appropriation of $36,000. We also had 2 other resolutions, one related to accepting the grant from the DCEO grant that the legislature had made available for body cams. It's partnering with the city and using the same program to coincide with the state's attorney's office for evidence. It will tie all their systems together, and according to the sheriff, it's one of the best programs out there. The last one then was the contract with the Illini Bluff School District to have a SRO available to them. I think that was it.
Thank you. Member Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just had one joint resolution, and that was with Phil's Committee Infrastructure, and I think he already explained that, so it was unanimously approved. We did have a discussion on the 2023 legislative agenda. We will be having that on January 13th, I believe at 8 a.m. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes, Vice Chair Williams, that's correct.
Okay. So that was it. Thank you.
And so I should have brought it up on the legislative agenda in there, but a couple things. I know our local state legislation knows about it, but wondering if this would be the appropriate place to talk about waters of the USA and the floodplain and the floodway movements that we're seeing that are affecting the river, where like the Riverfront Museum would be in a floodway, and giant parts of Chillicothe would be in a floodway. I know it has more to do with federal operations, but I think it is maybe an important topic to still have that our all of our local legislators would also know about it, because this greatly affects. And I don't even know, like we were talking about the post office in there, where is that post office in a floodway? And for those of you who don't know it, is we keep written maps, and they're wanting to go to an algorithm, basically where a computer tells it everything instead of using true historical data to generate these maps. So there's some major issues in there, and that, unless there's other members that have a question, but this might be a place for us to have a discussion about it, at least bring it up.
So thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so put a little bit more information with it. So we're one of the few counties in the state that still has original paper maps for the floodway and floodplain designated areas. We actually have digitized those ourselves. The federal government would really like us to go to a digital form. The draft that they've presented us, as the chairman stated, was created using an algorithm from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It completely ignores over 50 years worth of data local data we have and maintain on the flooding event and flooding history of the Illinois River, the Kickapoo Creek, and several other tributaries of the Illinois River. That algorithm significantly expands the floodway. The issue here is that when that happens and there is damage to a structure that's in the floodway, it cannot be repaired nor replaced. It also significantly will impact our residents and taxpayers' ability to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, which this board has taken many actions over the last 30 plus years to ensure that our residents and taxpayers receive significant discounts on federal flood insurance. If we are kicked out of that program, there will be no federal flood insurance available for our residents, and they will have to buy flood insurance on the open market, which is drastically more expensive than what the federal flood insurance is, and even substantially more expensive than the discounts that they are already getting based on actions of this body over the last 30 plus years. And actually longer than that. So there is a comment period. We're working through the appropriate state agency, which is the State Water Survey, to make sure that our concerns are addressed. We're not sure if we're going to be able to effectively see those maps changed, but one potential way of providing a means of support for us, if the chairman and the committee and the board were interested, and you alluded to this, Mr. Chairman, is this the opportunity or the moment in time that the board needs to revisit federal legislative services? By way of background, we had federal legislative services or lobbying services at the end of George W. Bush's presidency. When President Obama came into office, the Congress eliminated earmarks, and we were actually in the middle of our contract with the lobbyists that we had at that point in time. And we generally don't lobby for issues in the Congress. We lobby for money. And what we saw was those funds dry up, so the use and the need for a federal lobbyist evaporated. The current Congress, at least the one from the last 2 years, has brought earmarks back. As far as we know, they are going to continue in the next Congress that was just seated yesterday, we might be in a position where we want to have that conversation again.
I know that position's been expressed by some board members, so I think it is something that we need to look into, having federal representation. And some local municipalities have recently signed on to, I know Peoria Heights has signed on to a lobbyist, and some others have expressed interest also. Member Renaud?
I just have a quick question. When they determine floodplain, and you said we have 50 years of data, does that take into account mitigations? Let's say
It does. Well, our data does. I'm not sure their algorithm does.
So I'm assuming they wouldn't. Like, one flood may not have flooded like the museum if it was mitigated, but in the absence of those, it may have flooded. So
Right. So a great example. So a critical piece in the sequence of the museum block was the city increased the elevation of Water Street. That therefore allows everything that is going up the hill away from the river side of it, so the museum side of Water Street is protected from a flood. It was designed and built to an elevation that is higher than the 100-year flood elevation. And that's another thing. We're not supposed to say 100-year flood elevation anymore. It is a flood that has a 1% chance of occurring every year. I know. And so in all practicality, the museum is very well protected from any flood event that we are likely to see. But under the proposed maps, it is not in a floodplain, it's in a floodway. Another example, and though he no longer sits around this horseshoe, I'm sure he would not mind me calling him out. Former Vice Chairman Fennell's residence backs up to the Illinois River, as many of you know. He has openly stated during his time in that residence, he has never experienced a flood or had flood damage to his residence. His residence is now in the proposed floodway.
I realize that this is a federal issue, but certainly when people's houses are seriously flooded, generally they call state offices to ask elected officials to help with this. I think we need to have representation at the federal level. I think this is an important issue, and I've watched the Army Corps of Engineers over 30 years do some really amazing things.
Member Williams.
I would agree with Member Daly that we do need federal representation. Also, Scott, is this something that we can address with our legislators when we're in D.C. in February?
I think it should absolutely be on that agenda.
Could you give us more information then? Is it possible to get that so I can do some research?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So this would go through Vice Chair Williams' committee, but if there's, in the past, what we did is we would put an RFP out on the street and see who would respond. I think last time we had Holland and Knight, Ferguson,
Two others
respond. Be a little easier in today's world, either now with Zoom capabilities, where everybody wouldn't have to necessarily fly here for the presentation, but have a presentation, and we rounded it down to I think 2, and then had one more question and answer period, and then go there. But if there is no opposition around the horseshoe, I think you would have direction to pursue starting an RFP process. I also think it would be important potentially to engage some other community stakeholders. I know the Heights had talked to us at one time, City of Peoria had talked to about one time. It might be worth having a conversation. What benefits a community here also benefits the county. So maybe there would be some conversations of splitting a bill for a legislator or a lobbyist in there with some municipalities wanting to be part of that. So as a broader conversation. Okay, I think we have enough people saying agreeable. Good deal.
Yeah, I'll just add, I'm in support of that too. We've talked about that before, and I think there's probably many things we may be missing line of sight of at a federal level, such as one you've spoken of, that would be to our advantage. Not that we can change it, but at least if we have a heads up, we can take appropriate action to offset it or manage it to address our county level needs. So I'm in favor of that.
Perfect. I know some municipalities have been engaging people for basically infrastructure projects, but then there's also a broader scope of things that you can look at. So, any other questions in that comment? I got a few other things under miscellaneous, but I'll let anybody else say if miscellaneous if they would like. Member Blair.
I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that the Smart Start micro grants will be available. You will be able to apply for them soon. We are just finalizing the application, and so the next week or so, that grant application will be on the Start a Business GP website.
Any other? All right, so I have a few different miscellaneous, and I'll try to get us out of here really soon. But I know I asked a lot of everybody on here, and this is their first meeting, and a lot of people were new chairs to committees. I just want to say thank you. I know that you did your homework on the background trying to get adjusted. We have new members that were reaching out trying to get educated. I know I didn't put everybody in the easiest spots of trying to do committees, but I think everybody has very good attributes that why you were in that seat, and I know you worked hard to get there. So from me, thank you. I appreciate it. And then a couple other things. So I want to try something differently, and just so nobody's caught off guard. Too many times, what does the county do? Or the county, people don't know about it. We don't really promote ourselves. So one of the things I think we could do to probably do that, and we've talked about it in the past, and we've never done it on a regular basis, and I'll give people some time to start this, but you know, we have 12 meetings a month. There's 18 of us, so maybe we just take 9 months and divide it up, and I'll let you know when. You can always come to a resolution and say, I would like a resolution presented to the board. But I know for new members, you don't know this yet, but Bradley University is turning 125 years this year. That's an anchor in this community. I'm not saying that the Member Coates would bring that forward to represent that as one, but we should start recognizing some businesses or social services or people that have done great things in here. So as a token of goodwill for you back to the districts and everything, I would like everybody to think about at least pick one, and I'll give you the month of when you're going to pick a business, pick a person, and we'll do 2 a month. We can do more if somebody had something spectacular or coming forward. Like Mr. Fennell's company is turning, what, 100 this year in February? JT Fennell. Like,
it's a milestone.
Those are ones we don't necessarily have to do, but we should. It'd be a nice way to token to say the county appreciates what you've done. I mean, most of the time our meetings are 45 minutes. If we add 10 more minutes to a meeting, it won't be the end of the world for a nice proclamation and recognizing people. So that's something I'd like to institute as long as nobody's opposed. And if you don't want to pick somebody, that's fine, but we'll give you enough notice that, remember, daily, your month is August, so that gives you some time, or somebody, if you know it right off the bat, so that you're not completely caught off guard. And if there's something else in your district, please come forward to me. Resolutions, so members, if you had something, we can recognize somebody, like what we just did with Brimfield Sports. We usually do sports, sometimes we do businesses, but I thought this was something we could do that doesn't cost us anything than a piece of paper and recognizing people or businesses for their accomplishments to the community. So that's one. And then the last thing is I just wanted some direction. Scott had mentioned that there was some money left over in the budget for administrative, and talking to some members, there had been, not I want to say complaints, but some of the seats aren't what they have been. These chairs are over 15 years old, that it might be time for an upgrade to some seats in this room. And it's under his spending authority, because we have a state buy grant or a county buy grant where we can get cooperative purchasing agreement where we can get them at a pretty good discount. But they still, when you're talking this many chairs for this room, that it's still going to be a good chunk of money. And I didn't want anybody to walk in here and say, oh, I never heard about that, or why did we buy chairs? So if nobody's opposed to it, I would like to have Mr. Sorrell look at possibly getting new chairs for this boardroom and with lumbar support.
Thank you. That's all I want is lumbar.
Can I be part of the selection committee?
Huh?
I said, can I be part of the selection committee?
So I just wanted to be open and when we were having that conversation, and that was something so that nobody was surprised if they walked in.
It was good timing because Sharon can tell you that I complained to her a little while ago. I was like, why are we sitting in these old chairs and we have newer chairs over there we don't use for these meetings? So, you
No,
know,
I just thought it was something that would be better to be open with and out front instead of everybody walking in here and saying, well, why are there new chairs in here? We never approved that. So if there's no head shaking, I think you have your direction.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. When you're done with your list, I have 2 things.
That was all my list. So thank you.
Okay. For members of the Infrastructure Committee, we heard yesterday that, and we also heard earlier today in another committee, during Public Safety Committee, that we opened the bids yesterday for the remodel for the public defender and IT space. The bid review was done today with the architect. So Mr. Salzer would like to have a special infrastructure committee meeting the day of the board meeting to bring forward a resolution to award that bid. We can work together on time of when that might be. And then second, based on the feedback that was given at Finance Committee, would like to administratively craft a resolution that Jan can work with the Finance Committee chair on and the members to do the Open Meetings Act appropriate version of a poll vote. Jenny's laughing because there is an appropriate phrase and I'm forgetting at the moment, but do a poll vote to get that on the agenda so that you adopt that resolution, albeit the night before we actually bring that to the legislators at the breakfast on Friday morning, the 13th.
I guess I had one more thing. And lastly, I know we don't typically talk about appointments prior, but I've been trying to work to fill some boards and been meeting with some heads of the boards. So the Care and Treatment Board had been really only had 2 members that were actually on there. So I am bringing forward 3 names at the next meeting. Todd Baker will be reappointed. He's the current president. Alicia Herman was the only board member technically still that had existence or term hadn't expired or hadn't moved. So the 3 new names are Member Daly had made a recommendation for Will Hayes, a realtor in town who has a child with Down syndrome. Member President Baker that did meet with him would be a fantastic. He's younger, so he will be going on there. Cliff Lane is an investment person in town. He has done extensive work with United Way on their review boards, so that would be a good addition because for the review boards. And then I asked Pastor Marvin Hightower to be the 5th member of that board, and he's agreed to do it. So if you wonder why there's 3 members of the Care and Treatment Board on there, and then we'll have some other ones, but I did want to just mention, if you do have recommendations for something, reach out, because some of those boards are hard to fill, but that board will be back and fully operational and be able to meet quorums, and they do some really good work in this community. So I just wanted to mention why you're going to see 3 names on there. So that is all I have, unless anybody else has anything else. Seeing none, meeting adjourned.